Saddam Hussein, best known as the Middle Eastern dictator, ruled Iraq for 23 years from 1979 until his overthrow and capture by the US in 2003. This is the story of how the street talk turns into the Middle Eastern most violent dictator. Just months before his birth, Saddam Hussein's father and his elder brother died. These deaths made Saddam's mother Sava so depressed that she attempted to abort her pregnancy and commit suicide. But despite her wishes, he is born on April 28, 1937 in Tikrit, Iraq. In Arabic, Saddam means the one who comforts. His mother remarried to her late husband's brother, and Saddam gained 3 half-brothers through this marriage. His stepfather, Ibrahim al-Hassan, was very brutal towards Saddam and used to beat and abuse the little Saddam. He was not allowed even to go to school. Rejected by his mother, Saddam Hussein was sent to live with his mother's brother, Karihala Talaf, who became a father figure to Saddam and was a devout Sunni Muslim and was very influenced with the Arab unity. Finally, he was allowed to go to school. He was trained by his uncle how to use the gun. It is said that he killed a person when he was just 10 years old. In 1957, he joins the underground Baath Socialist Party, which was the most activist political party in Iraq of the 1950s. And the aim of that party was to assassinate General Abdel Karim Qasim, Iraq's new military leader. A young street talk, Saddam Hussein was selected for this job. October 7, 1959, the 22-year-old Saddam Hussein arranged 2 squads on both sides of the road to assassinate Qasim, who was driving in the jeep. They were planning to shoot Qasim from both sides of the road. They all shoot at Qasim, but as they were shooting from both sides, Saddam is shot by one of his fellow assassins, wounding his legs, but managed to flee the scene. General Qasim survives. Saddam Hussein was a wanted man now. He goes to Syria, then to Egypt. 4 years later, where he spectacularly failed, other Baathist members of his party succeeded. In February 11, 1963, General Qasim is overthrown and executed during Ramadan Revolution, and Abdul Salam Arif becomes president. Saddam returned home from exile. He marries his cousin, Sajida, the daughter of his uncle and mentor, Karila. Saddam was just still a thug, and he was offered a junior role working with Iraqi peasants. But in July 1968, his luck changes. His distant relative and senior Baath party member General Ahmad Hassan al-Bakr seizes power and becomes president during another revolution with the help of USA and CIA. He appoints Saddam as his chief of internal security. Now, Saddam recruits all the people of his own tribe who were young and tough, who knows how to use weapons but not that much educated. He trains them. He was doing all the works for the regime. Saddam slowly developed his personality as an absolute ruthless, as he was personally enjoying inflicting pains. His torture chamber became infamous as he was regularly takes part in the torture with cruel and unusual techniques like burning cigarettes into prisoners' eyes and many more. He did his job so well and became vice president. He then focuses on the vulnerable part of the population, that is Iraqi's Jewish community. Jews were hated by many Iraqi population at that time. Iraq was very badly defeated by Israel. He arrests 14 men and boys and put them on trial for spying for Israel without any proof. In 1969, all the falsely accused were hanged and was shown on TV and was given a public holiday as a celebration. In 1972, he nationalized all the oil industry, which helped Iraq for massive development to transform Iraq's infrastructure, industry, healthcare system, and raise social services, education, and farming subsidies to level unparalleled in other Arab countries. Electricity was made available to every part of the Iraq. He modernized villages and helped Iraq to bring in the 20th century. He built many roads. He was becoming popular in Iraq. Over the next 10 years, his power keeps growing. He was the real power behind the scene. Finally, in July 1979, Saddam takes over as president from al-Bakr, who was forced to resign by Saddam Hussein and who will spend the rest of his life under house arrest. At only 42 years old, Saddam Hussein is now the president of Iraq. But not everyone accepts him as a president. On July 22, 1979, 6 days later, the new president calls a special meeting of senior Ba'ath Party members, which turns out as one of the most notorious events of Saddam's reign. All the members were invited to the Congress without knowing the agenda. He claims that there is a conspiracy against him. During the meeting, a list of 68 names were read out loud, and each person on the list was promptly arrested and removed from the room. Of those 68, all were alleged as traitors and found guilty of treason. 23 were sentenced to death. In just a couple of hours, he eliminates all his political opposition. By August 1979, hundreds of Saddam's political enemies has been executed. He has achieved total power. He has even said himself that if he gets any suspicion about a person, he will simply kill him. Around the same time, there was a revolution in Iran, which was Iraq's neighboring country, and the Shah dynasty was Sunni government which was supported by USA, and the dynasty that was ruling Iran for 2,500 years was overthrown during Islamic Revolution. The new government comes with the communist ideology. Most Irani belongs to Shia Muslim, whereas Saddam Hussein and most of his government belongs to Sunni Muslim. And this was a great threat to his regime and to US as well. Without any warning, on September 22, 1980, Saddam sends his troops into Iran, believing the fighting will be over soon as Iran was in the middle of revolution. But this was Saddam's biggest mistake. The war lasts 8 years. Iran has 3 times as large population and 3 times as large territory compared to Iraq. 2 years later, estimated 100,000 Iraqi soldiers were killed and thousands more injured. United States of America supported Iraq and Saddam Hussein. Secretly, Saddam was building a chemical weapon, Tabun. Even Hitler refused to use Tabun in battlefield. In 1983, Saddam unleashes his chemical weapons on Iranian soldiers. USA and other West countries did not act against this and did nothing. He even uses this chemical weapon on his own people, killing almost 5,000 civilians and injuring more than 10,000 in northern Iraq, Halabja, to the Kurdish minority, whom he had a problem for several years. The Kurds are not Arabs and are of different ethnicity and wanted independent homeland. In the history, no other heads of state had used chemical weapons against his own people, like Saddam Hussein. USA and other West countries did not take any action against him. In August 1988, Iran accepted a ceasefire and the Iraq-Iran war ended. 8 years of death and pain and nothing accomplished. Over 1 million people died in that war for nothing. The economic condition of both countries was destroyed after this war. The same year in 1988, Saddam, often pictured as a family man, took a mistress. Saddam's oldest son Uday Hassan was offended by the insult to his mother. Saddam Hussein declares himself as the winner of the war against Iran. 500,000 of his people are dead, and he has not gained an inch of territory. He put his name and face on everything, like in the brick with Saddam International Airport and etc. On his every birthday, he present another statue of himself to Iraq and its people. Due to the war against Iran, Iraq was on debt and owes almost $40 billion to Saudi Arabia and Kuwait to prevent the expansion of Shia radicalism. Saddam Hussein urged the Kuwait to waive the Iraqi debt accumulated in the war, but Kuwait refused it. Kuwait was very rich, but Kuwait was defenseless. Saddam believes Kuwait is producing lots of oil to deflate the market, harming Iraq's income. The price of oil was dropping due to extraordinary mining. August 2, 1990, Saddam Hussein invades Kuwait, giving a justification that Kuwait was a historical part of Iraq. He sends more than 100,000 troops in Kuwait. This became his greatest mistake. Syria, Egypt, United States of America, and even Russia united to oppose the invasion. It only took 6 hours on August 2, 1990 for Saddam's army to occupy the tiny country Kuwait. United Nations demanded that he withdraw from Kuwait and quickly imposes a boycott. UN imposes economic sanctions on Iraq and setting a deadline by which Iraqi force must leave Kuwait. When the January 15, 1991 deadline was ignored, a UN coalition force headed by United States of America confronted Iraqi force. On January 16, 1991, Operation Desert Storm begins with the wave of bombings, cruise missiles, and smart bombs in Baghdad. Kuwait is liberated after 6 weeks, and all Iraqis are driven out of Kuwait. A ceasefire agreement was signed, the terms of which included Iraq dismantling its chemical weapon. After this incident, rebel Shia Muslims in southern Iraq and Kurds and North were making headway against his wicked force. Yet within a few months, Saddam crushed them all. After the incident of 9/11, where Al-Qaeda attacked New York, everything changes. Iraq was suspected to have weapons of mass destruction. The United Nations sends inspectors to Iraq who found and destroyed huge stocks of weapons, including chemical and biological warheads, and even a super gun built to lob cells 100 miles towards Israel. The inspector also discovered that Saddam was still at work developing a nuclear bomb. Oil was sold on the black market, as well as medical supplies originally designated for his people. Saddam used that money to build palaces for himself. Meanwhile, his nation starved. He will kill anyone who will say anything bad to him or to his government. Iraq was suspected to have weapons of mass destruction. On March 2003, Operation Iraqi Freedom begins. US war tanks roll into Baghdad. Just 3 weeks later, USA occupied Baghdad, Iraq. Saddam Hussein was nowhere to be found. Saddam was placed at the top of the US list of most wanted Iraqis. United States offers a $25 million reward for the information leading to the capture or killing of Saddam Hussein. $15 million for each of his sons. In mid-July 2003, an Iraqi walked into the military field office in the northern city of Mosul and told US officials where they could find Saddam's son. July 2003, his son Uday and Qusay and 14-year-old grandson Mustafa were killed in a 3-hour gunfight with US forces. Saddam Hussein's inner circle was getting smaller and smaller. Saddam was moving frequently from one safe house to another, protected by loyalists. Eventually, he was tracked down on a farm few miles from where he was born. December 13, 2003, he was captured while hiding in a hole in a ground near Tikrit. The former dictator surrendered without any fight. He had a pistol and 2 AK-47 rifles, but he did not resist the soldiers. There were no injuries or casualties in the raid. The captured tyrant also had $750,000, but the money was no use to him now. He was taken to an undisclosed location for the verification of his identity. A combination of scars, a tattoo, and DNA convinced US authorities that they had the right man in custody. All the people from Baghdad celebrated with joy. It was hard to believe that the man who terrorized Iraq for 30 years was now at the mercy of his captors. US force handed Saddam to Iraq, placing his fate in the hands of people once he ruled. Nearly 3 years later, Saddam is found guilty of crimes against humanity and sentenced to death. He wished to be shot, which he felt more dignified. On the day of execution, Saddam refuses his last meal. December 30, 2006, on the first day of Eid ul-Adha, Saddam is hanged at the age of 69. Saddam Hussein is a murderous street thug who ruthlessly kills all opposition to get to the top, kills millions for his own vanity, created chemical weapons of mass destruction and used them on his own people, and who made Iraq living hell, is finally dead. That's all for Saddam Hussein. Thank you.